everybody? Andrew here, back for our build review show. It is Friday, October 18th of 2024. And on this show, I bring users builds up live on stream, giving them personalized feedback and advice about things that I think that they can do differently in their builds to ultimately help improve their post-contest sim ROIs. We go over contest selection as well. So it should be a fun day of the show. We have a few people signed up, but if you ever want to get signed up for this show, we do this show Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern. All you need to do, drop your DK username in the office hours channel in our Discord server. Let me know what sport and slate you want me to review, and I will add you to the list for the next show. So with that said, first up today is going to be Bulldog. We talked about some things that Bulldog could do recently in their builds. It looks like they applied those, and we are going to basically go over them today and see how they did in yesterday's Thursday night football slate. So Bulldog did ask to check out their single entry in 3 max, so we can 100% do that. So why don't we get them up on the screen, and we'll go back to yesterday's NFL contests. Denver, New Orleans. All right, so 2 builds here. Single entry in 3 max, MME build. And we're going to start in the contest tab as always. All right, so as far as their contest selection goes, this looks like a good balance of single entry in 3 max. We see plenty of single entry in 3 max to complement the other contests, taking one shot at the flagship. So this all looks good to me. No problems at all. Now, why don't we review a few of these? They did ask for single entry in 3 max. So why don't we start with some of these 3 maxes? We'll look at, both of them here and see how they're grading out. All right. Looks like this did load. So we're going to go with users who entered the max, sim ROI. All right. So looks like highest sim ROI lineups are in like the 70 to 80% range. And Bulldog had about a 20% sim ROI. So good news. It is positive, right? That's always good news. But there is some room for improvement here. So we're going to figure out ways that we think that they can improve from this point. Now, what do we see? So we see average dupes at 9. We see sim average score at 82.5. I think this is probably the biggest thing, right? Is that we always talk about this balance between average dupes and sim average score. So like, for instance, here we see that users with a similar average dupes of 9 have a sim average score closer to 86.8. And then if a user has a sim average score closer to Bulldog at, 82, well, their average dupes are like 1 to 3, right? So we see that here with Falstaff at 9 average dupes, 86. And then we see Tie Guy and then AC Legend with both with a lower sim average score. So like 80 sim average score or 82.7 sim average score. In at least this one contest here, right? And then we can see how it applies elsewhere. So we looked at 3 max. Let's go look at a different one. And we'll check out the $1 3 max next. See if we see something similar or something different. All right, users. 3 entries, sim ROI. Okay, so highest sim average scores in this contest, somewhere in the 100 range. Bulldogs at 37%. So again, still positive. Probably just needs to do something kind of similar here, I would guess. But This one seems a little bit harder to dissect because our average dupes is 6, sim average score is 84. We do see people around the same range with possibly even higher dupes, right? Like Gieber, same sim average score, 14 dupes. But then we see some people, right, with like 82 and 2 dupes, 83 and 1 dupe, 85 and 1 dupe. So I think that this is going to be probably the similar problem across the board here for probably all these single entries in 3 max. Or rather, I think if you focus on solving that balancing problem, it will benefit you across the board. Not to say that it's a problem in and of itself. So why don't we jump into this single entry and 3 max build? And just for the record, I don't think these contests are, you need to approach them differently than your MMEs. You know, I don't think you need to have like an MME process and then like a single entry process and be doing something totally different. For what it's worth, like at least like on classic slates, you know, I am still just autofilling for both, regardless of the entry fee or, you know, whatever it may be here. I'm treating them the same. So let's see what we see. Max lineups, good. Default min-max salary, totally fine. Looks like just 2 minor adjustments to projections. No filters, no rules. We see projected score, geo mean, sim ROI. I think that these are all good filters to have. I wonder if we turn this off. So I want to see the effect that these filters had as we go through them. And let's put these save lineups back. All right, so we have a fresh pool. So we had the projection. So this is a lot with the projection. I mean, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you're trashing like 60% of your pool here. Feels a little aggressive. If you want to go further than like 10 to 20%, you know, maybe like 25%, you know, I really wouldn't go further than that. So maybe just like a little aggressive there. Geo mean doesn't seem like it's high enough, right? So geo mean I would be going higher. Just to get some effect. Sometimes you can like do the geo mean formula and end up with just a small number of lineups in the trash. I think it's almost better at that point to just trash minimum 10%. That's something that I've been doing. You know, I play some of those like smaller field showdown contests, and when I do the formula and it doesn't trash anything, I'll at least get it to like 10% lineups in the trash. So that could be something you change there. Sim ROI greater than 0 is always going to be fine. Doesn't look like there's any projection adjust. I'm sorry, minimax exposures. No minimax exposures here in the captain. None in the flex. So overall, I think just a couple of tweaks to the filters here will go a long way. So just maybe toning down projection a little bit, turning geo mean up a little bit. You could even experiment with using the ownership filter because it seemed like dupes were playing a factor there, and mess around with those things, right? So at a minimum, 10% geo mean, at a maximum, 25% projection, and then possibly use the sum ownership one. So try that out. You know, you're really close and you're not far off, right? We saw a 20% sim ROI, 37% sim ROI. So those are good. We just obviously, you know, we want you to be one of the top sim ROIers in the contest. So keep at it. Good stuff. All right. With that said, that was our first person of the day. Next person of the day is gonna be Lewis, and we are going to be looking at Thursday night football as well. So why don't we get them up on the screen here? And let's keep it rolling. All right. Got them coming up now. So let's jump over to the contest tab as soon as this loads. And let's look at contest selection. So pretty healthy balance. Single entry and 3 max, a lot of low stakes coming up. Maybe closer to like a 50-50 split, but I think that this is totally fine as far as choosing what contest you want to enter. Only entering, half the max in the $2, half the max in the mini max. Those are totally fine decisions to make. So why don't we study the mini max here, since we have the most entries and it's a reasonably sized contest. All right. So we got to do greater than or equal to 75 and sort by sim ROI. So Lewis is neutral sim ROI. So we got to figure out what's going on here to help them increase that. Highest sim ROIs in the contest, if you're shooting for like the 20% range, that's probably a good spot to be. So let's see here. Average salary looks reasonable. Average dupes is at 8. Sim average score is at 80. It doesn't look terrible. I'd say it doesn't look that bad, because we see like some of these people with like 81 sim average score with like 12 dupes, 13 dupes, and that seems like an okay progression from like where you're at. So why don't we go into your build? We might learn more of what's going on from the build. Okay, so what do we see? Default, min and max salary. Right on, Trevor. Glad. Looks like Trevor's here live, so glad they're able to join. Default, min and max salary. One rule, no filters. My own geomean less than or equal to 23. We have a dupes less than 5 filter. ROI greater than 0. Okay, so first thing that I want to talk about is, personally, I don't think you should use the rule unless you have to. Now, what I mean by that is that if you're on the starter plan and the rule is your only option, then okay, use that. But if you are on the ultimate plan and you have access to custom metrics and contest sims, I would just do geomean as a lineup filter. Basically, you have more of an effect on the lineups that the builder generates naturally doing it with a rule, as opposed to a filter. You're taking more of the raw sim outputs and just getting rid of the ones you don't want. So I like using geomean as a custom metric and a lineup filter. So I would try that. I've noticed that when you do the rule, you can just end up with a lower projected set of however many lineups are in your pool to start, and it makes it hard to raise that value, which we see has an effect on post-contest sim ROIs. So if you can, try not using the rule, try using a custom metric and a lineup filter to complement the dupes and the ROI one. Now, other things, looks like they use min uniques of 2. That's totally fine. Okay, maybe this has something to do with it. Maybe it doesn't. Looks like they have like a global max exposure for captains. This could drive down your average projection as well, just because Alvin Kamara grades out so good compared to every other player. Like, I noticed that my Kamara captains tended to be positive sim ROI and my other captains tended to be negative. And it's just because of like the raw, what you're getting on like a raw projection basis for this player. Now, if you wanted to take a stand against him, then you have to understand that your post-contest sim is probably going to suffer because of that. And that's like a conscious decision that you need to make and be okay with ultimately. So if you're okay with that, then I think it's fine. But I'm sure that this probably has something to do with the lower average projection set of lineups overall. So just be aware of that. Flex, no one more than 90. That's such a high number. I doubt it really even comes into play. So I think that's okay to have that as a guardrail that you want. A couple notes here. Don't I want to just remove highly duped lineups from a pool of 5,000 so the lineups left are all going to be low dupes? So not exactly, right? We talked about this idea of basically when a lineup is projected to not be duplicated in our fields, the ROI that you see is the lineup's ceiling ROI. It can't go higher than that value. Now, let's say that you see a lineup in your top, however many lineups you're looking at, say top 20, and it's projected for 4 dupes. In theory, that's actually a lineup you probably want to play, because if it's duplicated, well, we are already accounting for it being duplicated, and it's still grading out well. Now, if the lineup actually comes in less duplicated than we expect, well, now your ROI can actually go up. So if the lineup's projected for, 150% ROI at 4 dupes, well, what if it's 3, right? It's actually going to go up to, 160, 170, maybe. I don't know. I'm just kind of making up numbers. If it's 2, it's higher. If it's 1, it's higher. If it's not duped, it's even higher. Well, when your lineup is 150% ROI and no dupes, if it gets duped once, guess what? That ROI is going down. That ROI is going down every single time somebody else is playing that lineup. So it's not, you don't necessarily want to avoid completely lineups that are going to be duplicated, especially if they're grading out well here, right? So you're trading a little bit of prize pool for win probability, but in general, I like to target, some of those lineups as well, just because they end up being strong lineups, right? They complement a set of lineups, and hopefully they're still under 5, right? That's why we have that like under 5, column in the post contest sim, because that number matters too, right? I think Will talks about this in like one of his MMA interviews. Our data scientist who works on a lot of these models, is he's always trying to find lineups with high win probability, but not too many dupes, and he cares a lot about his under 5 percentage. So that matters. A couple follow-ups. Great explanation, man. Thanks so much. So as an ultimate plan user, you just avoid pool rules altogether. So me personally, I don't use them, right? That doesn't mean you should avoid them completely. Now, it depends what you want your lineups to look like, right? If you have opinions about what you want your lineups to look like, then rules can be useful, right? So it's like, maybe you always want a wide receiver captain paired with their quarterback, right? It's like, okay, if the wide receiver is the captain, chances are they get a touchdown from the quarterback does well. Maybe I always want that, right? That would be a good time to use a rule. So for some of those lineup, characteristic type things, if you want to use those for player combinations, etc., then that's okay. I personally don't use any, but I don't want to tell you to completely avoid rules. Because sometimes there's something that you want to see in your lineups, and sometimes a rule is the best way to get to it. But all in all, good review. Make a few of these changes that we discussed here, and see if that benefits your sim ROIs over the weekend here. And I'd be happy to take another look at your lineups next week. So good stuff. All right. Keeping it rolling here. Good stuff so far from the users we've reviewed. Next up is going to be Sammy. And we're going to be looking at Thursday Night Football as well here. So let's get Sammy up on the screen. And let's knock this out. All right. pulling up this build now. We're going to jump over to the contest tab. So it looks like they just played the mini max. You guys know my thoughts on only playing 150 max, right? Got to mix in some single entries and 3 maxes. Got to mix in some dime times and quarters as well. But I'm not going to harp on it too much here. So why don't we just jump into this mini max? And let's let these lineups load. How big is this contest? Trevor said, appreciate the time. Yeah, man, for sure. 100%. So let's give this a second for these lineups to load. It is a little bit of a bigger contest, so it can take some time. Sammy, you did nothing wrong. All right, cool. Lineups did load. Jump over to users. All right, entered 150 lineups. Sort by sim ROI. All right, so here we can remove some of these trains. So less than, I like to say like 140. All right, so some of these sets that we're now looking at probably should not be lineup trains. So that's good. So Sammy is negative 8% sim ROI. Highest or good sim ROIs to be shooting for probably like 20 to 30%. So let's see what we can find out here. Average salary is at 47.5. It's a little bit on the lower side, but we see some sets around that range, so that's okay. Average dupes is 39. Unique lineups is 8. 40 under 5. And then an 80.5 sim average score effectively. So trying to find somebody around his range. Sometimes these are hard to tell off the bat why they're wrong. But sim average score does look a little low. Like the top player here, like Trouble, 20 average dupes, so down 19, and then slightly higher sim average score. So like ultimately we'd like to see Sammy's average dupes come down if they're going to play projected lineups around this range. So they're not too far from being good here. Let's go into this build and see what happened. All right. So why don't we just roll what we can see? 0 min salary, 49.6 max, 4 rules, sleeper captain. We did talk about these last time, or yesterday rather. Let's look at them again. To refresh our memory. So sleeper captain, so basically Xing captains above 20%. You know, I don't know if that's like the best option here. Really, because it's such a huge stand against them. You know, if you think about it, probably one of the best things to do is to just, if you don't want chalky captains to beat you, then it's probably better to just match the field, because that is the most neutral thing that you can do, right? The most neutral thing you can do is say, hey, I'm going to play as many shares of the chalky captain as the field does. That way, if when they do good, I'm live. When they do bad, I've lost on average the same amount of lineups as the field has, right? Or if you just want to take a stand against them, you know, maybe just not such an aggressive stand, right? Like we always talk about, hey, when you want to take a stand on a player, being like 2 to 3x the player's exposure compared to their ownership, right? So in this case, right, maybe you want to be like half their ownership. Maybe you want to be like a third. That puts you in like the 12 to 18% range. Having zero, of the top owned captain is really aggressive, right? And that's what this sleeper rule will get you, saying use a captain whose ownership is less than 21%. Well, there is a reason, right, that Alvin Kamara is 36% owned. Like, the field is not dumb. High usage player, all the other top position players are hurt. Obviously it didn't work out, but I think that if you played this slate over and over and over again, he would probably, work out more times than not. So just be aware of that. Think about leverage in the opposite direction too, and how big of a stand you're taking against a player by making a decision like that. I think some of these minimum exposures are fine. 2x Bub Means, 3x Cortland Sutton, right? Those are right in those ranges. Matching the field on Bo Nix. It's okay to have those. We see max exposures for 1, 2, 3, 4 players. That's really not that many. We see some small projection adjustments. They seem minor. They seem to be on players who are super uncertain, right? Running backs, backup wide receivers, thrust into big roles. I think these projection adjustments are fine. What do we see in terms of filters? GL mean, ROI. These are good filters to have. I'm not sure if you did this by default or if this was like an after the fact thing, but I wouldn't use single game saber score. If you have contest sims, I would be using ROI. ROI is going to be even better than single game saber score. So use the best sorting metrics that you have available for you. So I would change that. What were some of these other rules? Overweight, underweight. Just targeting players that they wanted to use. I think that's fine. A good, I like the way they did this too. It's a bigger group rule. And it's like, hey, take one of these X amount of players. And you give the builder flexibility when you do that. Or it's like, use no more than one of this group of players, which is this other rule, right? Again, that gives the builder some flexibility. It gets to decide, and it gets to just have a limit. So I like those rules. I think they're not too restrictive. And then this last spot rule, use at least one player in the flex whose ownership is less than 21%. Okay, I think that's fine. Trying to get a little different. Sammy says that he did use ROI to fill his lineups. Or maybe they used the single game to fill, but used the ROI initially. So that can just kind of throw off, your analysis, right? If you're going through direct fill, you're looking at single game, or you're looking at ROI and then you switch to single game and then all the exposures like kind of change, right? You always want to pick your sorting metric first and then make all your adjustments after the fact. But I would still, even if maybe you even want to try custom metrics, right? Maybe want to do something where you combine some of the things you like about single game saber score with ROI, right? And you want to get fancy and you want to do something like that. That's okay too. So just think about some of those things, figure out what works best for you. You gotta figure that one out. But all in all, hope I provided some helpful tips here and ideas about different things that you can do to continue to improve. So let me know if you have any questions about those. Happy to answer any of those things. But with that said, we are all caught up on our users who signed up today. So appreciate everybody tuning in all week here. I will be back Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern for our next build review. Reminder, no office hours tomorrow. Office hours will be back on Monday. So good luck to all of you in your contest this weekend. I'll be rooting for you. And until then, take care. Thanks. Bye.